The diner door swung open at exactly noon, and the moment the dust-covered stranger stepped inside, the room went silent. His leather jacket was cracked and sun-bleached, his boots caked in mud, and his helmet dangled from one hand like a weapon he was ready to drop. Every eye in Golden Plate Diner turned toward him, and before he could even find a seat, the manager's voice cut through the air like a blade. "We don't serve his kind here. What happened in the next 10 minutes would change more lives than anyone in that diner could have imagined." Adaise Chukwu had been waitressing at Golden Plate for almost 3 years. Ever since she moved to Lagos from Enugu with nothing but a suitcase and her promise to herself that she would build a better life. She worked double shifts, sent money home to her younger siblings, and endured Mr. Bankol's sharp tongue because the tips, on a good day, were enough to keep her, studying at night for the accounting certification she hoped would one day lift her out of this cramped, grease-scented kitchen and into something bigger. She was 26, tired in the way that only people carrying invisible burdens are tired, but she still smiled at every customer who walked through that door, because her mother had taught her that kindness costs nothing and sometimes means everything. The man who had just walked in looked like trouble to everyone but her. His hands were rough, scarred across the knuckles, his beard unkempt, his eyes shadowed with something that looked like exhaustion layered over grief. He didn't ask for a table. He simply stood near the counter, waiting to be noticed, the way a man waits when he has learned not to expect much from the world. Mr. Bankol, the diner's manager, was a stout, sharply dressed man who prided himself on the restaurant's clean image, an image he protected fiercely because the diner sat along a busy road frequented by wealthy businessmen and government officials. He took one look at the biker and made his judgment in half a second. "Get him out of here before he scares off the real customers," he hissed at Adaise as he stormed past her toward his office, refusing to even look the stranger in the eye. Adaise felt her stomach twist. She had heard Mr. Bankol say cruel things before, about customers who didn't dress well, who didn't look successful, who didn't fit the image he wanted for his restaurant. She had swallowed her discomfort more times than she could count, telling herself that speaking up would only cost her the job she desperately needed. But something about the way this man stood there alone, unwanted, his shoulders slightly hunched as if bracing for rejection he had already expected, made her chest ache in a way she couldn't ignore. She walked toward him anyway. "Sir, please come sit down," she said gently, gesturing to a booth near the window, the one furthest from Mr. Bankol's office. The man hesitated, glancing toward the kitchen as if unsure whether he was welcome, then nodded and followed her, his boots heavy against the tiled floor. "If you believe in kindness and second chances, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that compassion still matters. And subscribe to Whispering Tales Stories so you never miss a story like this one." Adaise brought him a glass of water first, her hands trembling slightly as she set it down, aware that Mr. Bankol could return any moment. The man thanked her quietly, his voice rough but warm, like sandpaper wrapped around something gentle. When she asked what he wanted to eat, he said simply that he hadn't eaten a proper meal in 2 days, and that whatever she recommended would be more than enough. Something in his voice broke her heart. She disappeared into the kitchen and, using her own small discount privileges, ordered him a full plate of jollof rice, grilled chicken and fried plantain, the kind of meal she herself couldn't always afford. When she placed it in front of him, his eyes glistened for just a moment before he composed himself, thanking her with a nod that carried more gratitude than words ever could. As he ate, she noticed the tremor in his hands, the way he glanced toward the door as though expecting to be thrown out at any second. The deep lines etched into his face that spoke of loss rather than simple hardship. She didn't ask questions. She simply refilled his water, brought him a second plate when he finished the first, and treated him the way she would want to be treated. If her own life had taken a darker turn, Mr. Bankol emerged from his office 20 minutes later, and his face turned red with fury when he saw the biker still seated, now finishing a warm bowl of pepper soup Adaise had brought him without asking. "Did I not tell you to get him out?" he snapped, loud enough for the other customers to hear, humiliation dripping from every word aimed at both Adaise and the stranger. Adaise's hands shook, but her voice stayed steady. "He's a customer, sir. He's paying, he's hungry, and he hasn't caused any trouble." Mr. Bankol's eyes narrowed, and he told her flatly that if she wanted to keep serving people like him, she could find another job to do it in. The words landed like a slap, and for a moment, the entire diner seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what she would do. She thought of her siblings back in Enugu, of the rent due at the end of the month, of the certification exam, just weeks away that this job's income was helping her prepare for. Losing this position could unravel everything she had worked so hard to build. But she looked at the stranger's face, at the quiet dignity with which he had endured being treated like he didn't belong, and she knew she couldn't live with herself if she turned her back on him now. "Then I suppose I'll find another job," she said softly, untying her apron with hands that trembled but did not stop. The diner fell into stunned silence. The biker rose slowly from his seat, and for the first time he looked directly at Mr. Bankole, his exhaustion replaced by something sharper, something that made the manager visibly shrink. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, his voice no longer weary but carrying quiet, unmistakable authority. Mr. Bankole scoffed, insisting he didn't care who any dusty stranger claimed to be. The man reached into his jacket, pulled out a worn leather wallet, and placed an identification card on the counter. It was the corporate badge of Adigwe Holdings, one of the largest logistics and haulage companies in West Africa, and beneath the photograph, unmistakably, was the name Kingsley Adigwe, listed as founder and chief executive officer. Gasps rippled through the diner. Kingsley explained, his voice heavy with old sorrow, that he had spent the last 3 days riding alone across the country, visiting the towns his late wife had grown up in, mourning her passing the only way he knew how, stripped of his usual suits and drivers, just a man and his motorcycle trying to outrun grief. He had walked into countless establishments over those 3 days and been turned away or treated with contempt because of how he looked. And Golden Plate Diner had almost been just another entry on that painful list. Until Adiz had looked past his appearance and seen a human being who simply needed to be fed and treated with dignity. Mr. Bankole's face drained of color as he stammered apologies, suddenly desperate to please the man he had just humiliated. But Kingsley wasn't interested in his apologies. He turned instead to Adiz, who stood frozen by the counter, her apron still clutched in her hands, disbelief written across her face. He asked for her name, and when she told him, he said quietly that Golden Plate Diner had just lost the best employee it never deserved to have, because he intended to hire her himself not as a waitress, but as part of the community outreach division of Adigwe Holdings, an offer she could accept whenever she was ready. On her own terms, no obligation attached beyond his gratitude. Adiz felt tears sting her eyes as the weight of the moment settled over her. The realization that a single choice made from simple compassion had opened a door she never could have imagined walking through. Before he left, Kingsley shook her hand and told her that in a world quick to judge people by their appearance, she had reminded him that true worth is measured by the size of someone's heart, not the cleanliness of their clothes. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear that kindness always finds its way back to those who give it freely. Before we reach the end, drop the word grace in the comments if you believe that every act of kindness plants a seed that eventually blooms into something beautiful. Weeks later, Adiz walked into the gleaming headquarters of Adigwe Holdings, wearing a new blazer she had bought with her final paycheck from Golden Plate Diner, ready to begin a career she never dared to dream of. Mr. Bankole's Diner, meanwhile, saw a quiet but steady decline in customers once word spread through the neighborhood of how he had treated both a grieving widower and the waitress, who dared to show him compassion. Adiz often thought back to that ordinary afternoon, the dusty stranger, the trembling moment she chose kindness over comfort, and she understood more deeply than ever that the smallest acts of humanity can quietly rewrite the entire course of a life.